Welcome back, everybody. Super excited as always. Welcome to this week's episode of the End of the Week, an international relations and national defense podcast. It is I, your good friend, Morgan Houston, aka Whiskey Mo, the internet's least famous academic. I am a scholar of irregular warfare, national defense policy, history. The list continues to grow. As always, super excited for you to be here. I hope that you guys have really enjoyed a lot of the stories that we have been covering the last couple of weeks. It seems that things just continue to get quicker and quicker and more rapid. I can't even keep track of everything that is happening. So I hope that you enjoy all of the things that we are talking about, because I hope that I'm giving you a little bit of a peek inside some stories that you may not have seen, because sometimes the national defense space can be a little bit broad, and if you don't know like the key words and key terms, you may not understand or see what they are covering or what they are talking about. So I hope that, again, you get some value out of this. We've got 4 stories this week that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the AFSOC Skyraider platform, the SOCOM commander's discussion of the Maduro raid, a new indictment for Raul Castro, and an interesting battle between the border patrol and the Catholic Church, of all things. So we're going to cover all of that today, and we're going to talk about it and give you a little bit of my opinions. And as always, I hope that you get some value out of this. But first off, let's go ahead and talk about this weekend. Is the weekend right before it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm getting ready to head down to the Air Force Academy a day after this comes out. And it's always kind of a special event when I get to spend time around the Air Force Academy cadets. In this case, I'm celebrating a cadet friend of mine who is graduating. Shout out, soon-to-be Second Lieutenant Ian Kim. Proud of you, my friend. But it's also tied around Memorial Day. So for most people, Memorial Day is a day of the beginning of summer. It is a barbecue. It's a good time. For some of us, it's time to remember friends and colleagues who have been lost. I don't think Memorial Day should be a bummer. So I generally think that most of my teammates and friends and colleagues who never made it back, they would actually want us to celebrate. The only thing that I ask you to do this Memorial Day, my friends, is for you to raise your glass and remember those who didn't come back from all of our different conflicts, including the ones that we are currently fighting now. So if you would please do that, I'd appreciate it. And with that being said, NatSec nerds, let's go ahead and get into our first story. The AFSOC Skyraider, which is a propeller-driven, single propeller-driven aircraft that is going to be used for a couple of different mission sets within Air Force Special Operations Command. And this has been designed to kind of replace on the soft side of the kind of the end of the A-10 as it's slowly being phased out. And we're seeing that this is kind of becoming more important after we saw what happened with Iran and the A-10 there. This is going to be used for reconnaissance, for precision strike, for a few other mission sets. But the concept is now gaining more ground, and it seems to be getting closer and closer to being developed. I think that this is a wonderful platform and a wonderful idea. I think we're going to see that aircraft are not necessarily going to have to be jet-driven to be functional in the coming spaces, because one of the things that we've learned with the A-10 throughout the last 25 years or so, and what we've seen specifically in the last couple of months or so, is that a slow, dedicated air-to-ground platform is really important. And this, I would really like to see an increase in the focus of a dedicated precision strike platform. This is getting really important because today I also saw news that the F-35 and F-15 are going to be given A-10 roles when they eventually retire the A-10 in 2030. And I think this is problematic because we keep trying to create these multi-role platforms, and they're usually pretty good at certain things, but having dedicated precision strike and close air support aircraft is going to be continuously important, especially as we continue to prepare for near peer and great power competition. So I'm hoping that through the guidance of AFSOC, Air Force Special Operations Command, that we can get to the point where maybe this can progress into something that'll go and expand beyond AFSOC, because I believe we've talked about it previously, but generally the model, how this works is our Tier 1 JSOC units, they usually set a standard, a tactic, a technique, or a procedure and new technologies, and then that filters down to the white side SOF, your Special Forces teams, your 2 series units in AFSOC, your Special Tactics Squadrons, the SEALs, anything like that, and then that filters down to the conventional force. So my hope is with the AFSOC Skyraider that it will eventually become a platform or set the standard for a platform that can be expanded beyond the scope of Special Operations Command and AFSOC. And what I'd also like to do is expand my audience. So nice segue there. So if you would please gently caress that like button. It always is good to know that y'all get some value out of this. When you give me a like, it shows that. But also if you hit the subscribe button, if you click that, then you can always be aware of what's happening, see what's going on. You can also hit the notification bell and see when I drop new videos, and I'm very excited for these things that are coming out. So I hope that you're enjoying this, but as always, thank you so much. It really does matter. But the next story, in response to, not in response to, but there was a speech given by this U.S. SOCOM commander, Special Operations commander on the Maduro raid. He said that this was the most complex mission of all time. It sets a new standard for SOCOM. And I agree. I definitely agree. The jointness and complexity of that Maduro raid was something to behold. It was impressive, regardless of any kind of political stance you may take. The skill sets that are required for something like that to happen is immeasurable. It was absolutely phenomenal that they were able to do this, especially with no loss of American life. But my question is this a good thing? Something that we have been discussing in the national defense space, especially when we talk about like force composition and things like that, is kind of the over-reliance on special operations forces. They are created to do specific things, and those specific things are now seeming to get tossed to the wayside. I'm very concerned about the capability of special forces teams to actually do what they were intended to do, the unconventional warfare side of things. SEALs have always been good at breaking things, but what is their role in the maritime environment, special reconnaissance, those kinds of things? So I think while this is really important for us to discuss and to think about, I think we need to not just over-focus on these direct action raids with these highly qualified Tier 1 units, and we do need to really focus on the capabilities and the actual mission sets that our special operators are supposed to do, because in reality, in general warfare, special operators are not the supported force, they are the support team force. What does that mean? The supported force is the main effort. Generally speaking, in most types of warfare, what you're going to deal with is your big conventional forces, other your supported forces. They're going to be led by a general who is a division commander or a corps commander. You think your 1st Armored Division, your 7th Cavalry Division, the 82nd Airborne Division. These are going to be supported by things like forward and prior to D-Day, teams of special forces teams, Navy SEALs, Air Force special tactics teams going forward and doing reconnaissance, engaging with locals and setting up insurgencies. Like, these are the things that special operations are generally supposed to be doing. And then once the fight has begun, they are continuing to support that main force by doing things like deep strike, by continuing to do special reconnaissance. So I hope that we don't continue to just to think of our soft bubbas as nothing more than this direct action. We're going to capture or kill somebody. Special operations have so many more core functions and so many more that are more important to the big scope of things than just DA. So I'm hoping that while we should commend and congratulate the amazing skill that this raid took place, we do need to understand what their role is going to be in the future fight. Third is a really interesting story that has international relations implications and some defense implications. As of Wednesday, the 20th of May, the U.S. Justice Department indicted Raul Castro, the former defense minister of Cuba and brother of Fidel Castro, on two counts of attempting to destroy an aircraft, 2 counts of conspiracy to kill American citizens, and 4 counts of murder. This is in relation to a 1996 incident where a group called Brothers to the Rescue, which was a Cuban-American organization of pilots that was originally created to help with the rescue of Cuban nationals who were trying to get across the Straits of Florida into the Florida Keys. Eventually, after enough times where they had scrounged some money and got some planes, and they would fly around and they would call the Coast Guard in to pick these people up. Eventually, a deal was reached between the Americans and the Cubans that the Cubans would attempt to stop people from getting into the water, and then if they had actually made it across the strait, they would then be returned by the U.S. to Cuba. Brothers to the Rescue then began to move their operations from a purely rescue mindset into a propagandist and almost revolutionary operations where they would drop pamphlets and they would fly into what is essentially contested airspace over Cuba. Now, it gets a little wonky with airspace because Cuba is so close. I believe it's 70 miles, 90 miles from Florida to Cuba. And during one of these flights, there was 3 aircraft that flew over. They contacted air traffic control, and Raul Castro supposedly, which I'd assume this is true, it makes sense, ordered that the planes were shot down by fighter aircraft of the Cuban government. And so now, nearly 30 years later, the U.S. government has indicted Raul Castro. I find this really interesting, especially from an administration that had been adamant prior to their coming into office that they were not going to start new wars. They were going to be a more isolationist nation. We talked about this when we talked about the national defense policy and the national security strategy, that they were going to have the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, and they were looking at a more isolationist policy. But you can now see between the Maduro raid, the Iran war, and now some of these overtures towards Cuba that this administration is seriously looking at possibly some form of intervention in Cuba. I'm not sure what this is going to look like. There was some really interesting discussion today on the Daily. Today is the 21st of May as we're recording this for the 23rd of May, about the possible overtures that maybe this could be something as simple as kind of a repeat of the Maduro raid where they go in and they try and snatch Raul Castro, or there's a possibility that this could lead to some long-standing operation where there is the removal of the Cuban government. They have not been subtle in the last couple of weeks in their discussions about Cuba. Marco Rubio actually spoke to the Cuban people in Spanish. I personally believe that this is some sort of precursor to some sort of action towards Cuba. I don't know what that action is going to be, though. I've come to learn that I cannot, and no one really can, predict what the Trump administration is going to do. But I do feel that this is definitely some sort of precursor to some sort of action against Cuba and against the Cuban government. I honestly think 2 things can be true at the same time. I do believe that the people of Cuba deserve a new government, that they deserve some more agency in their ability to interact with the world population, and they are the main sufferers to the isolation that has happened because of both the Cuban and U.S. governments. But I do believe that a military solution to this is not the right avenue. But we'll see what is happening. We'll keep you informed in this. I think it's really interesting to see where this is going to go. Especially considering that Iran has not been solved yet. And so we're getting ready to jump into something else. So we'll keep you informed. Keep your eyes peeled for this. It's going to be really interesting. Our last story, which is one that I heard on NPR, and as always, I try to remember, but not always, but I will this time. I make sure that the stories that I reference are going to be down in the thing below. And if you were watching this on either YouTube or Spotify, they are always going to be down there. there is a current clash between the Catholic Church and the U.S. government over a piece of property that the Catholic Church owns on the U.S.-Mexico border. The U.S. government has filed an eminent domain claim against part of this land that the Catholic Church considers a holy site that is a shrine. The church has now filed suit because the Trump administration wants to build a wall through the church-owned land. One of the things that does make this interesting is that you can only access the totality of the site from the United States side of the border. And at the same time, this is a very well-known smuggling route. However, this area is fairly well covered with ground sensors, drone surveillance, aircraft surveillance, mounted Border Patrol agents both on horse and on SUV. So I'm finding this to be a very interesting discussion of the national security implications of unlawful immigration, about the rights of property owners, about the extent to which this current administration, CBP, are willing to go to build a wall that really shows no signs of being actually effective in stopping immigration. But the fight between the Catholic Church and the government is what I really find interesting, because if you don't know, the Catholic Church does have its own international relations arm, its own foreign service. The Nuncio I cannot get it. It's essentially a cardinal who is appointed to a nuncia, which is their equivalent of an embassy. And so the U.S. has one, and we have ambassadors to the Vatican City, all of these things. So this isn't just a battle between a religious organization and the government. It is also a battle between a foreign nation. There's a lot involved, and anytime you bring the Catholic Church into it, it gets exceedingly complex and interesting, especially in a place like the South. This is in New Mexico. Latinos are famously majority Catholic in the American Southwest. It's the same here in the Intermountain West where I live. It's not a monolith. There is a significant number. As I always like to tell the fun story that my great grandfather was the first Spanish-speaking Southern Baptist preacher in Colorado. But I think this is something to watch as we continue to see how the Trump administration and CBP continue to interact on these issues of immigration and immigration policy, especially considering that there's been kind of a stopgap in the bureaucracy of the Congress between getting funding to ICE and CBP. I just got word on my phone, the New York Times reporting that there was a delay in a funding bill for immigration reform. So these are the kinds of things that are going to be interesting, because the one thing, if you don't know how eminent domain works, is that it allows the government to purchase land at a significantly reduced price than fair market value. Even though it says fair market value, there's little calculators that they use that doesn't give it exactly the same scale. It's generally at a significantly lower cost. And it's not to purchase the entire site. It's only to purchase, I believe it was a 14-acre site. Again, story in the description. That's an audio-only story, but you can listen to it. It's actually a wonderfully reported piece. So that's going to be really interesting, because despite what many Americans may think, this is not just a domestic issue. The way that the U.S. handles all immigration is very much an international relations issue, as the influx of immigrants coming to the U.S. is always a big and interesting thing. But that's our 4 stories for the week, everybody. As always, if you have thoughts, go ahead, put them down in the comments. If, as you are watching this throughout the week, if you have stories that you are interested in, if you can get me a comment up to about Thursday before the Saturday this drops, I will try my best to address it and talk about it in the show. I would love to hear what you want to know and what you want to follow. Suggestions and opinions about what the show, about formatting, those kinds of things. Please let me know. I'm here to make this better for you so that you can get more value out of this. And to show that you get value out of this, please gently caress that like button. It really does help. Every time I get a higher number of likes, I get more views, and I want to get these things out to as many people as possible, because I think these are stories that people should know about. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It really does help to get more of everything we do out there. And if you want to know when every video drops, go ahead and hit the notification bell. As always, it's very much appreciated. And until next time, y'all, I'll see you again at the end of the week.